So, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are having among us a very eminent personality, Dr. Parameshwar Krishnan Iyer, who is a professor at the Department of Chemistry, IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Let me briefly introduce Dr. Iyer. Dr. Iyer did his PhD from Central Salt and Marine Chemicals Research Institute, Bhavnagar. He did his MSc from Bhavnagar University. Dr. Iyer have many awards and recognition to his credit. He was after doing his PhD, he was been awarded with Goldsmith Foundation Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Israel. After that, he was awarded with the Lady Davis Postdoctoral Research Fellowship. Then he was awarded DuPont Postgraduate Researcher Fellowship USA and US Army Research Associate Fellowship USA. He is having many other editorial advisory board. He to his credit also, and he have transferred many technologies to industry, which include technology transfer to RR Animal Healthcare, Inchem Technologies, Reliance Industries, Guwahati Neurological Research Center, Yashraj Biotechnology. He is having 18 projects to his credit, sponsored projects to his credit. He have already finished 14 projects out of those projects, and 4 projects are ongoing. He is having 180 publications in international journals, all highly reputed journals. So this is a huge number, sir. He is having patents, like more than 24 patents, international and national patents to his credit, and he have published 4 book chapters. So, sir, I invite you, I welcome you for delivering a webinar for our students, for our faculties, our staff members. It is really a moment of pleasure for us that you have accepted our invitation and you are here for your webinar. Thank you very much,
so
sir.
much. Thank you. I'm loading my slides. Please let me
Yes,
know
sir.
if it's okay.
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible, sir. You can switch to your PPT.
Is my screen visible now?
Your screen is visible. You can
Yeah.
turn on your PPT.
Yeah, my PPT is also on. Can you see it?
Okay. Yeah. You can open your PPT now.
My
Go to
PPT is
the.
open. I made it full screen. Can't you see?
Okay. But
Can you see my PPT now?
No, sir. PPT is not visible.
Can you see now?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is visible, sir. Full screen. Yes.
Is it clear? Can I start, madam?
Continue. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, madam, for inviting me to be part of this webinar activities of your university. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to talk to you all. And I come from a place which is quite far from Gujarat, the other end of the country, northeastern part of the country. I don't know how many of you all have been here. So I am practically, I've been, I can say I'm Gujarati. I have been born and brought up in Gujarat, in Bhavnagar. And after my education up to my PhD, I moved for postdoc and then joined at IIT Guwahati in 2004. Okay, and since last 16 and a half years, almost I have been here as a faculty in the Department of Chemistry and the Center for Nanotechnology. Now, this is very important to highlight here. I'm part of the Center for Nanotechnology. It's a blessing for me because, we do work which is really interdisciplinary. Okay, and that interdisciplinary nature requires students from various backgrounds, students from, all fields, we can say all engineering and all science background students. That is where we are able to, do a lot of things, beyond the boundaries. Okay, and I am told that a lot of students who are attending lecture today are from interdisciplinary areas, from biotechnology, microbiology, so many other areas, and you all are now during the time of this COVID, especially the role of you all is very, very important. So in my talk, what I will do is I will try to cover certain areas related to new materials development, nanomaterials development. That also includes a lot of biological materials, okay, biocompatible materials. And I will show how these new materials can have applications in very interdisciplinary areas in the sensors. Though I've written in optoelectronics, I will not talk about a lot of devices, but they have a lot of applications, and also in the healthcare area. So I go to the next slide. So this is an image I always try to show, because these are the people who really are working in the lab. These are all young students like you all. Okay, most of them are PhD students. But there are many students here, like this girl and few other in the group who come to our lab in the summer, and then later on they also come back to do PhD. Another important thing is that I've shown some the fonts of different color, red color and green color. So red color students are all from are having background of either electronics or biotechnology or biomedical engineering. So this is how our entire group is made up of. And this is a very beautiful area. It's a border between India and Bhutan. And Bhutan is not very far from Guwahati. If you go by car, it's hardly 2.5 3 hours. Okay, so this place called Bogamat is a very nice, beautiful picnic spot, and the river flows from Bhutan towards India. So every year, and we go for a picnic, and this is how the we also get together for a lot of other activities. And there in the last line, there are students who are not shown in the picture. I would like to highlight, these are newly joined students among the Mukul Patel. He is from Baroda. He has just joined this year. Okay, so I also have a student from Gujarat this year joining. So start my now technical talk. If there are any questions, if you can all can ask questions now, or later on also, I'll be very happy to answer to them. Okay, so this is how we go about in the lab. We either make different kind of molecules, or we purchase a lot of different kind of molecules. This can also be biological systems, and we make polymers. Okay, these are large molecules and small materials, and we make lot of different kind of energy conversion devices or sensor devices. So these are light emitting diodes, photovoltaics, the thin film transistors. Now these are very, very important thin film transistors. We also make devices with that, and in another 4 to 5 years, you will see there are a lot of biocompatible or that devices which are implanted within the body, which are dependent on these TFTs. In addition to that, we also make these memory devices. These are random access memory devices, and of course, all of them are based on various kind of sensors. And these are a lot of applications we study with these kind of devices. This includes these theranostic devices, meaning both therapy and diagnostics, and the optoelectronic devices. We have devices on energy and environment. And while doing this, what we realize that there are a lot of technologies which are really very interesting and useful to both the industries and practical the societal applications. And we have been very fortunate to have contacted few companies and of course few hospitals with whom we work, and there has been very good technology transfer with them. So I move ahead. So these are the topics that I'm likely to cover today. Okay, the very first thing that I will be discussing is about the neurodegenerative disorders. Okay, this probably will be very interesting to you all, being from microbiology and biotech background. So I'll be mainly discussing on Alzheimer's disease here. The next I will be talking about a few environmental applications or sensors that are useful in the environment. I'll briefly touch upon the other topics, mainly the forensic sciences. The importance of these biological components in our finger and how they can be used for detection purposes. I will also be showing very briefly on the various kind of sensors that are used for cancer this detection, cancer cell interaction and killing them. And also towards the end, I will show both about bacteria as well as the virus detection. Okay, and the kits that we have been making and how they have impacted the last point of the society. So this is how my entire lecture will be. Let me see how fast or how much I can cover in this entire lecture. So let me start with the first topic, the neurodegenerative disorders, or this Alzheimer's disease. This is a very, very important topic to be study or to know. As such in India, we are not very serious as of now, because the average age in India, as such, it's not very, very high. But in Western countries, I've shown here the average age is is quite high, and this disease usually starts only after the age of, or it's predominantly observed after the age of 65 years only. Okay, but the onset is quite early. Okay, it's before 65 years. And what happens in this disease is, if you have an Alzheimer, then the main thing that we see is you see a memory loss. Of course, you have a lot of difficulty in decision making. You have problems even in speaking and even writing. And of course, when you have all these things, you have inability in even in learning. Okay, so since the time this German psychiatrist, he discovered this disease, the number of cases that have been found across the Western countries and other parts of the world is steadily increasing in a very, very big number. And what is happening is that you will see that or the statistics tells that more than 5 million Americans, or across the world more than 40 million people are affected by this disease. So it's a very severe disease, and if the average age in India it increases much higher, you will see the number of cases in India is also going to rise over the years. Okay, so how do you really find out and how do you stop it? That is what I'm going to try to cover today. And what is our contribution, and how new drugs are coming up in the market. That's what I'll be discussing today. So what exactly is this Alzheimer's disease? So as such, it's comprised of different kind of peptides, and these are two different kind of A beta peptides. This is having a sequence between 1 to 40 amino acids and 1 to 42. Okay, and this is what is responsible, or this is what becomes a neurotoxic. And the distribution in the brain is around 31 microgram per gram. And usually, along with these peptides, you also have 4 different kind of metals. This is the iron, the copper, the zinc, and the aluminum. Okay, so in addition to the peptide, that misfolds or the aggregation of this peptide, you also have these 4. So if we want to prevent the formation, or if you want to prevent the happening of the Alzheimer's disease, we have to make sure that these metals are removed from the brain, and we also are able to stop the aggregation of this peptide. So what happens is usually in this, if there is a healthy brain or a person who doesn't have this disease, the A beta that is present in the brain, it is usually non-toxic, and it is in a monomeric form. Okay, so more we have it in the monomeric form, the brain is considered to be healthier. Okay, so we have to make sure that if any treatment that is there, it is based on this, to protect the monomers, while the other forms of this A beta that is there, we have to stop it. And I'll not go into too much details into this, but these are the main reasons. So you have the neurofibrillary tangles, or the lot of these peptides that are there, they form this different kind of tangles, or they form these bundles, or they form separate specific kind of twist. Okay, that is what is the reason for this aggregated for the aggregation. In addition to that, you also have a lot of plaque formation. Okay, so this plaque formation also has to be stopped, or they form big clumps, or they are called the glial cells. All these things, there are also dead nerve cells. So we have to make sure that this doesn't happen. The clumps don't form, and the nerve cells that are there, they also don't die. So overall, it's like a multiple thing that is happening in the brain. What I discussed was about the amyloid hypothesis. Okay, but in addition to that, there are several competing hypotheses that is happening in the brain. The second one is that the tau hypothesis. We really don't work on that, because that itself is a very big topic. But both these things, the amyloid hypothesis, the tau hypothesis, these are two very, very important reasons where this we have this problem with the amyloid disease. Nowadays, there's another thing that has come up. It's called the mitochondrial dysfunction. We have slowly started working on this. How to protect the mitochondria. So both the red ones that are shown in this study, we really try to target the amyloid and the mitochondria protection to make sure that these the molecules we make are useful for some kind of purpose in this amyloid treatment. I go ahead. Okay, so this is how it starts. As I told you that you have the monomer. This is what the sequence I have shown. This is the amyloid precursor protein. Okay, and it can be in the beta and this in the gamma secretase form, and later on it becomes the A beta peptide. This is a sequence. Okay, the A beta 1 to 40, the A beta 1 to 42. In the 42, you have these two extra these amino acid these fragments, and we have this monomer form. I'm just showing you in a very simplified cartoon how this over several years, over several decades, I should say, this monomer form that is there, it gets converted into these fibrils. Okay, so in the monomer form initially, if they come together, they start aggregating, and it forms oligomers. Okay, initially it was thought only this fibrils are very toxic, but now it has been known that even these oligomers that are there, they're even more toxic than the protofibril forms or the fibrillar form. Okay, so it is necessary now that we start targeting, okay, right from this stage, or give some protection to this. There is monomers which are present, they don't get converted into these oligomers. Okay, so these are in the monomeric form, they get converted into oligomers. Okay, they also get converted into the protofibrils later, and you can see now from small particles they become like a rod or bigger this form, and then there are a lot of them that get together. Okay, now in the lower part, what I have shown, the blue dots that I have shown, okay, or the blue squares that I have shown here, these are so different kind of metals. Okay, these are different kind of metals. This can be iron in the +2 oxidation state or the +3 oxidation state. It can be the copper, or it can also be the zinc. Okay, so metal can have different kind of intervention in the monomeric form itself, and then go and form these fibrils, or this metal can also intervene or form come along with the different forms. It can form from any stages. Okay, it can interact with either oligomers, the protofibrils, or even at the fibrillar form. And in the presence of metal, okay, even the in the brain, it experiences more is reactive oxygen species, and you say the toxicity in the brain, or there are more neurotoxicity in the brain. Okay, so whenever you have a metal, there's an added problem. So you have to also remove the metal. Plus, the second thing is you also have to take out you have to break down the fibrillar form. So this has been our effort, that how to protect this brain, from this this metal impurity, as well as how to take out or break down this fibrillar form. So over the next few slides, I'll be showing how different molecules or different materials, biomaterials, they're biocompatible, non-toxic materials are necessary to prevent this happening, or how we can find out cure for this disease. So as of today, there is absolutely no cure for this amyloid or this Alzheimer disease. Okay, but since now we know, or we have an idea that amyloid can be dissolved or broken up, so this can be a small step in finding out a cure for this disease. Okay, so I move ahead. This is another image taken from the below mentioned site. This is what the plaques, the deposit happen. So you can see you want the tangles that are there. This is in a healthy system, it's very, very clear, nothing is there. Okay, healthy cells, but this is what causes the problem. So you can imagine this, that there is a lot of crowding here, a lot of what you call the plaques that are there. This doesn't allow the communication of two nerve cells. So we want to clear this, or we don't want this kind of deposits to happen. Okay, so this is what is cells that cause the neurotoxicity. Similarly, the same thing I've shown here. This is what is shown in the cartoon form. Okay, you have this the plaques that come together, and they form this. They come together and form this toxicity, but we have to remove this. But in addition to that, if you see this, there are different kinds of dementia, and we'll not discuss about everything, but you can see the Alzheimer's, or the problem with the brain, the Alzheimer's constitute almost 62%. Okay, and everything else, there are a lot of other kinds of dementia. Parkinson's is also one of them. Okay, but Alzheimer's is one of the major diseases. This is what we have to pay attention to, and we can see that if we can remove this, or we can reduce this, it's going to be a big help to the society. I move ahead. This is about the brain atrophy, or how the brain looks of a patient who is having this Alzheimer's disease. You can see that initially a healthy brain looks very, very nice, but a person having the Alzheimer's, you can see that the brain sizes shrunk down. Okay, and over the time, you can see what is happening. This is a healthy brain. You can see there are a lot of these gaps. So this is all because of the neurotoxicity. A lot of these healthy cells are destroyed, and this is what happens to the brain. There's another image similar to this. You can see overall that the healthy brain, how it looks, and the advanced Alzheimer's, it has completely shrunk. Okay, so the ability for a person to think, act, and learn new things, and it completely reduces. Okay, so this is what happens, if somebody is affected severely with an Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so we have to find some cure, and some of the methods by which people are trying to find cure is the following list. A lot of people are making these small drug molecules, okay, that are available in the market. Several efforts are being made, but as such, you don't have any drug molecule presently available. So in addition to synthetic molecules, you have a lot of peptide-based molecules in the market. You have some antibodies based drug molecules. Now, this is another area which is coming up. The last three are areas which are coming up in a nice way. Since the metals are also involved along with this aggregation, now you also have some metal ion chelators that are present. Okay, so these chelators are molecules which come and bind with the metal, and they can take out from any system. Okay, so you have these metal ion chelators that are present. Now, another area which is coming up over the years is, I am also going to talk about this, is the nanoparticles based research. The good thing about nanoparticles, why people are using the nanoparticles, is that they can pass the membrane, they can cross the blood-brain barrier also very easily, and that is where and they can be biocompatible, and their surface area is more. That is where their activity is much better than most of the other systems here. Okay, and the nanoparticles can be based on simple this chemical compounds. They can also encompass these biological components to it. So it's a very nice area, new area that's coming up, and I'm sure that you all are aware that nanoparticles are playing very nice role in so many other applications. Okay, when we started working almost a decade ago, okay, that time there were no reports on these conjugated polymers also, but now we see that there are a few reports, a few other groups have joined in. So this is a very interesting area, and I'll be showing right from the beginning how this has come into being into a very interesting player for getting very good activity towards these aggregated peptides. I move ahead. So these are the two common dyes which are usually used to confirm the presence of these aggregated peptides, okay, or the amyloid peptides in the brain or in biological samples. One is called the Congo red. So this is a dye molecule, and as the name suggests, it's almost like a red color. And the second one is the thioflavin T dye. Okay, so these are the commercially available dyes, and whenever there is a presence of the aggregated peptides, these dyes, they form very nice complex with them. Okay, they form an assembly with them, and it gives out a very specific color. I will be showing you. Okay, one by the spectroscopy and another by the microscopy. Okay, you can see a very nice color with both of them, and that is an indication that you have the aggregated peptides or a sample fluid. If you mix them, and this will give an indication that the sample taken out from this person may have this aggregated peptide, or that's an onset of this disease in this person. Okay, so in addition to this, these days the technology has improved a lot, and we also have a lot of other instrument techniques which have come up to determine. I will be showing very briefly about this. This is the FTIR spectroscopy and the CD spectroscopy, and you also have the Congo red birefringence from microscope. We can see this the presence of this aggregated peptide. In addition to this, now we can also visualize, or you can see the morphology of the aggregated peptides by various microscopes. I'll be showing very briefly about this. I will not go into the details of this too much. So these are the two techniques where you can characterize, okay, by the CD spectra. So this is from the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid. And if there is an aggregated peptide in this is very similar to the commercial aggregated A beta. You can see very similar. Okay, so very similar. You have this, these bands at 198 and 204 nanometer. So whenever a CSF has these two, we can compare it with a standard, and we are sure that there's an aggregated peptide in the CSF. So usually, if there is a healthy patient, it should be this peak should not be there. Similarly, in the case of FTIR spectra, this is very commonly available at most of the places. Okay, so if you have a cerebrospinal fluid, and if you see this 1633 centimeter inverse, peak here, that also is an indication of this, aggregated peptides. Okay, so both these, are the spectroscopic techniques where you can very easily see the presence of this aggregated peptide. And in addition to this, as I mentioned, you also have some morphological techniques where in the microscope you can see the presence of these monomers or the fibrils. Okay, the monomers you can see they are the round. This is also seen in the protofibril, the stage just before the fibrillar form. Okay, so you can see this, so like spherical form. Here the monomers, You have, very, very long fibrils as expected here. And this is also seen, so in a patient having Alzheimer, you can see the very long fibrils that are present here. And oligomers also, they are slightly bigger than this. So this is the AFM images, and this is the FESCM images, okay, of the standard sample as well as of the cerebrospinal fluid. So I'm just showing you all this because these days, as the technology, has progressed, we are now able to visualize, okay, the presence of these aggregated peptides, which was not possible previously. Okay, so now since we have these very good techniques, we can very easily characterize from a very early stage. Okay, from a very early stage whether a person or a human being has any kind of this disorder or this neurodegenerative disorder is already there, or is there any onset of this disease. You can find it out at a very early stage. And if you are able to find out at a very early stage, we can at least, if not cure it completely, we can at least try to delay this, this disease. Okay. So this is what we have been trying. I've told you that we have multiple these approaches. We have this the peptide which has even these metals in that. So is it possible that if you develop a polymer like this, okay, is it possible to bind with the metal and then take out the metal and then get this pure form of this peptide or the monomer again, and also we can get, and can we observe that changes. So this is what this is slightly research based. I will not go into too much detail. I have been told that you all are undergraduate and postgraduate students also, so I will not go too much into the details of this, but if somebody is interested, I'll be very happy to discuss with them. So as I mentioned, you all are aware about iron. It's a metal which is present in the highest amount in the in our human body, and it is very vital for a lot of physiological activities. Okay, so it is if it is deficient, then we have anemia and a lot of other problems. But if there is an overload, okay, then there are a lot of other diseases, a lot of organs are affected. And as I mentioned, if there is an overload of iron in the brain, then it is also responsible for this Alzheimer's disease. Okay, and why are we using this conjugated polymer? So this is a very, very important thing, because most importantly, the system entirely is fluorescent. Okay, you don't need an additional dye. Okay, secondly, it's very, very sensitive, and the concentration that we use is very, very less. Okay, it's very highly selective to whatever we want to detect. In this case, it is iron metal. Okay, in addition to that, okay, we can also tune the functional group for selectivity or whatever we want we can get, and it is also soluble. And we can make a device with that by putting it on whatever the surface we want. It can be a membrane, it can be a chip, or any other surface. And most importantly, since it gives out a color, I'll be showing you in the next slide. We don't need an additional dye for this purpose. Okay, so this is very, very important. I move ahead slowly. Okay, what is a conjugated polymer? This is really a little bit of basic of this conjugated polymer. So you all know what is a polymer. But when I use this word conjugated, in the terms of chemistry, it's slightly different. So I'm just showing you here. Okay, in this case, if you all pay attention, there is a single bond here, there's a double bond here. So whenever you have alternating single or a double bond, or a single bond and a triple bond, okay, that is called conjugation. Okay, so this is very, very important, because whenever you have this, there is a delocalization, and there is a charge, whatever is that, it can go from one place to another by a mechanism called hopping mechanism, and it can also be made as a semiconductor. Okay, so we can make semiconducting devices with them, and these materials, they can also give out light. Okay, they can absorb light, they can also give out light. That is where these materials are very, very unique. In addition to that, the detection ability, they are also able to act as sensors for a lot of different applications. So I'll be showing you here in this case, there is special effect because of double bond. It's called the molecular wire effect. Okay, so the polymer, you have this, you can see this backbone, they are completely connected by in this bond. Okay, this is single bond, double bond, you can imagine that. And whenever you want to detect something, what happens is that whenever it goes and binds with, this is the binding unit. Okay, so whenever, in this case, suppose if it is the metal, if it has to go and bind here, so when it binds here, a lot of this chain, it's like the lights you see in Diwali. Okay, so if one of them binds, a lot of them either get switched on or they get the switched off. So I'm just showing you here. Okay, so whenever there's a metal, you see, so this is what happens. So this is called the molecular wire effect. Okay, it goes and binds, and whenever they go and bind, okay, so even a small quantity is sufficient to realize the change. And this is, not seen whenever you have molecules, like, whenever they're not linked. Okay, whenever they're not linked, what happens, it binds with one, only one gives out a signal. In this case, then though it is binding individually, the response of the entire polymer is collective. Okay, so that collective signal gives out, more light, or that is why it makes it highly sensitive. That is where, this system are used for a lot of different application in sensors and in biological applications. I move ahead. So this is, I will not go into the research, but this is the color I want to see in UV light. This is very, very dilute. So this is exactly the polymer. You can see blue color. Okay, very, very bright blue fluorescent. And when you add the iron metal to that, I hope you all are able to see this very clearly. It's a bright blue fluorescent color. And when we add metal to that, the color completely disappears. That means, it's a very, very good sensor for only this polymer having this, iron 3. Okay. Now I move ahead. I'll show you that, why this is very, very important. So we can do this in, any other thing. There's the molecular wire effect. You can see when I add this is a fluorescent spectra, and there is a completely quenching of the fluorescence. I put the same image here. Okay, so this is a polymer, very, very bright. In the fluorescent spectra, whenever I add the metal, there is a big jump, and there's a decrease in the fluorescence. Okay, now something, when the fluorescence comes down, there is also a possibility that I can get it back. Okay, now how do I get it back? That means, this should also be able to, if I take out the metal from here, then it should come back. How do I do that? In this case, I add various kinds of iron. So in this case, the polymer is, negatively charged. Okay, and the metal that I added, the iron, it is positively charged. Okay, so there's a negative and positive interaction. There is a complete quench of the fluorescence. And now if I want to get it back, I add something more negative. So these are different kind of, negatively charged anions that are present here. In this case, when I add the phosphate, what happens? Again, the same thing happens, the molecular wire effect. Okay, I take out the metal, there is a big jump in the fluorescence, and I can see it very clearly. Okay, and we have done this detection in even in the blood serum, and a lot of other applications we have realized with this. So it is practically useful for detection of metal and the iron metal even in biological media. Okay, now moving ahead, this is how we ended up studying the presence of this metal in this aggregated peptide. So I studied the presence of metal, only metal. Now, we wanted to know whether this is a porphyrin or the metal or protein. Okay, so in the blood we have this hemoglobin, a lot of other metal containing or the iron containing porphyrins or this heme molecule. Okay, so we have done the detection of this met hemoglobin or ferritin and cytochrome C. All we have done, we can see that whenever there is an iron present, even in the presence of organic this core molecule, the biological molecule, still the fluorescence there is a change. What does this indicate? That the polymer system that we made, it is very, very sensitive or very, very selective to the iron present even in the biological fluids. Okay, so this is a very, very good indication that we can use this polymer or the bright polymer for the detection of iron, even if it is present in the brain or cerebrospinal fluid. And probably that is the reason that we can use it for the cure of this aggregated peptide. Okay, I'll not go into the details of this. Here we have shown that it can also bind with ferritin, which is a difficult kind of protein, and here also it is binding with ferritin, and we can see the fluorescence quench. I move ahead. I'll not discuss this in detail. Okay, I go back to the earlier information. Okay, so we got some samples from a hospital. Anupama Madam mentioned that we also work with a few hospitals in Guwahati. We are very fortunate to work with one of the hospitals. It's called Guwahati Neurological Research Center. Okay, so they provide us with the cerebrospinal fluids. Okay, so they have this big section where they collect the CSF, and we collect that, and we have checked more than around 600, 700 samples, and certain samples have this fibril. That the detection of the fibril was very, very important. And how do we see that? Whenever we add this Congo red or with thioflavin T, the Congo red, there is a change in the spectra, and in thioflavin T there is an enhancement in the fluorescence. Okay, this is an indication that there is some aggregated peptide present in this cerebrospinal fluid. So what we did, we have this polymer to that. Okay, so this is when we add this Congo red to cerebrospinal fluid, we got an indication that there is an aggregated peptide. And now to this, so I am just shown this arrow that it moves from left to the right. Okay, and same thing happens here. When you add this polymer to that, what we do is we break the aggregated, or we take out the metal that is present, and it goes back to its original position. Okay, so this was an immediate indication, yes, that our polymer can work to dissolve this or break this aggregation in whatever way it is possible. Okay. Now we go to a practical thing. This is the same thing that I showed here. Okay, this is that image of this birefringence I mentioned. This is what we can see visually. If there's an aggregated clump, so this is what we can take out. We can see it in the microscope. And if you all observe very, very carefully, okay, these you can see like a golden color, but you can also see greenish color. This is called a crimson apple color. This happens that whenever you have the cerebrospinal fluid and whenever you add the Congo red to it, okay, in the polarizable optical microscope, you see this color. Okay, this is a very clear indication that this sample or whoever is the patient, you have the presence of this, some sort of aggregation already in the cerebrospinal fluid of this patient. Okay, so this is a very, very nice indication, very clearly seen. Okay, and so our aim is, to see that if we add the polymer, can we dissolve it? So this is what happens here. Okay, it's very, very big. And as we add the polymer, this spectra, there is a change. You can see there is a small change happening gradually, and then ultimately it goes back to where it started off. And this is what happens in the image. Okay, we start off when we add the polymer, it is completely dissolved. Okay, and we leave it for some time, and we realize that it doesn't come back. I have a small movie. I hope you are able to see this. I'm just playing this movie, so you can see you have the aggregated peptide. Anupama, madam, are you able to see this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Yeah. So basically, this movie shows that you have this aggregated peptide. When you add this polymer, okay, you can see that slowly it dissolves. We leave it for some time, and usually there is a small polymer coating that is on this, and this doesn't allow the dissolved the fibril to come back and aggregate it again. Okay, so this was all done below a microscope, and it was very, very nice to see. I'm just going back to the image. So this is what happened. You started off with this, and towards the end, you don't have any of this aggregated peptide. Okay, so this was a very nice thing. Okay, but every system has a positive thing. Every system has a negative thing. Okay, we had a small problem with this polymer, that it was not crossing the blood-brain barrier. Okay, so that is one major issue, that whenever you make a drug molecule, okay, if you want to use it for the treatment of the aggregated peptide, you have to make sure that it also crosses the blood-brain barrier. Okay, so this was not possible with this polymer. We have been working over the years with a lot of different systems. I'll just try to conclude this part. It has been a little bit longish, and we have been developing. So one of my students recently, this has come up very recently. We have now developed a system which does everything that other polymer does. With this is a small image of the polymer. Okay, so it can dissolve the aggregated peptides. It can remove the metals. It can even remove the copper. In the previous thing, I also showed that. And most importantly, we can make very, very nice. We call it nano dots. With this, it can cross the blood-brain barrier. And it's a multi-targeted polymer-based drug approach. And I had mentioned in earlier slide that it also prevents it also targets the mitochondria. It also prevents the damage of this mitochondria. It doesn't allow the reactive oxygen species to form. And most important, we can inject it in the tail vein of this animal, the mouse model, and it reaches the brain. And it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it can do all these activities within the brain. So this has been recently published in 2020 in this journal. I'll not discuss into this, but most of the things that I showed earlier, it does interaction with the metals. It interacts with the aggregated all forms of this peptides in the monomeric form, in the toxic fibril form, and it brings it back to the non-toxic form. Okay, so this is very, very important aspect with this polymer, and we have tried to overcome and also shown all these activities even in the animal model. And we are hopeful that this kind of polymers and this kind of molecules can go to the next stage of drug discovery. Okay, so we are trying to take it to the next level very soon now. I move ahead now to another approach, or other systems, other polymer systems. Now these polymers also have is again a multi-targeted polymer. I'll not go into synthesis, but if you pay attention to these two drug molecules, okay. So there is a nitrogen here. These are two benzene rings. There is an OH group here. These are the two molecules that are already used or initial stages of this the amyloid peptide. What we have done, we have already made such kind of systems. We have put the same molecule here. Okay, the oxygen that is there here, okay, same, and the nitrogen here, and we have the same polymer which gives out the light. Okay, so we have already used it for various applications. I not go into the detail of this, but as such, the target for this was both, the amyloid as well as cancer. But in addition to this, it also is useful for imaging applications. I will be showing in the next slide only one slide of how even this molecule is useful for the cancer thing. Okay, I will not show the application of this amyloid because I have already discussed a lot with this. Okay, so this is a small transition. from the amyloid or the Alzheimer disease to the cancer-based applications. Okay, in this case, what we have done is that the same polymer I have shown here, it forms a very nice. It gives very nice color here. Okay, you can see here in the imaging. If you want to do imaging, it is very selective to the cancer cells. We can image it in the greenish color, in both the green and in the red field. Okay, it gives a very nice color. So whenever it's in the water, it gives all this color, and we can use it for various applications. Most importantly, there are existing drug I've shown here in DOX. It's the doxorubicin. This polymer, it forms a very nice complex with the doxorubicin. And what happens is when it forms a complex, we can also use this polymer, the drug delivery agent or drug delivery vehicle. Okay, so again, very important in this case, it can be very easily injected in the mouse model, and there are various kinds of this, the tumor that are present in the case. Whenever we use this, the dissolve of this tumor is the highest. Okay, so very nice applications. We can use it for the cancer therapy. I've not shown here about the amyloid thing. So in the same polymer is also used for the amyloid. It's also used for bioimaging. So whenever you have this kind of system, you don't need to use any additional kind of dyes for various applications. So you can see that it has applications both in drug delivery as well as imaging applications. Okay, so very nice, very simple system, and we can also make it in the form of nanoparticles and by this aggregation process. And it has great potential for multiple applications. I move ahead. This is a new area for you all, and it's a very nice upcoming area. I'll just give a very brief introduction. Madam, how much time is remaining? Around half an hour?
Yes, sir. You have,
okay.
Yeah.
20 minutes, I suppose, yes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I will now briefly go through this. This is an area. It's called aggregation induced emission. I talked about a lot of different kind of dyes. In this case, this is a new discovery that has happened in the early 2000s or 2001, 2002. Okay. So as you all know that all the biological applications that you all do, there are various kinds of dyes that you come across. Okay. Now the dyes have, a specific problem. They have like a core like this. Okay, I'll be showing you the next slide what is the core. Okay, and what happens is that they try to stack on each other, and whenever they come over each other, then what happens is that initially they're very bright, but with time they lose the fluorescence. Okay, so when the concentration increases, you see this, there is change in the fluorescence. Now how to overcome that? That means you want a dye molecule, okay, or a dye to be very bright. For example, fluorescein or alizarin. So many other dyes are there which are very bright. But as they come together slowly, what happens? They stack together, and we call in terms of chemistry, they call it pi stacking. And usually instead of giving out energy, in form of light, they quench, or there's a non-radiative pathway they follow, and usually there is no emission. So how to overcome that? Okay, to overcome that, we need to make some molecules, or we need to make some dyes in which this the overlap or the pi stacking is not there. For that, what we need to do is we need to have something like a rotor. We call it rotor, which are flexible. Okay, in which so when something is like this, it will not stick on each other. Only when it is a flat system, they can come and stack over each other. Okay, so we want something which is like this. Okay, so that it doesn't stack on each other. So in this case, what we do is we introduce a phenyl group, and which can be rotated very easily. Some of the molecules I've shown here. Okay, this is a very nice system. I also have used in this specific molecule in one of our work. Okay, I'm going to the next slide. Okay, but this entire image, it shows that there are a lot of applications in biology and electronics and environment. So many applications are already realized with this kind of systems. Okay, so there, what happens is that this name has come from a specific phenomenon. It's called the aggregation. You are allowing the molecules to aggregate. Okay, but when they come together, they are stacking very nicely, and there is a restriction of the intramolecular rotation. They are unable to rotate. Okay, the rotor groups are there; they should rotate. But when you add it to water, okay, they are unable to rotate, and that is what they have to give out energy in some form by relaxing, and they give out that in the form of the radiative pathways. That is where they are made to aggregate, and then they give out the emission. So this is, I'm sure you all are aware about the fluorescence. This is how the dye is, and this is what happens. Okay, this very bright dye, but as it comes together, you see that as such that there is no color. Okay, Whereas in the case of this kind of systems, these are all flexible. Okay, they are usually colorless, but then as you take it in water, they become very bright. So that is where the system comes up. There are a lot of other systems. I'll not go into the details, but what I showed you is about the dyes. It can be various colors. I have shown you blue color. This is a green color. Initially they are bright, but they lose the color, and as they come together, this is a disadvantage. And in the case of the AI-based system, you want them to be very, very bright, and this is what happens here. Similarly, this is a new area that is coming up. You want to make dye molecules, irrespective of the system or the solvent you use, they remain very, very bright. Okay, I will not go into the details of this. This is mainly the crystal form of this. These are also used for security inks and a lot of other purposes. Okay, so ideally you want this kind of system. Okay, but I will not be discussing in today's lecture anything about this. So I move on to the next slide. Okay, what we use, and this is now I'm slowly making a shift toward the environmental applications with this kind of dyes. Okay, I showed you. I will also show one or two examples of cancer. Okay, so we have used another system which is very, very available, and in this case, you can add whatever groups you want, either in the N, the nitrogen here, or in this position. Okay, add to. We can get whatever interesting properties or interesting these systems. Okay, these are called NAFTA group. They are interesting with this kind of materials. Okay, one of the applications that we have shown here is that whenever we introduce this a simple group here. Okay, so the two groups here, as I told you, one is durability group. We can use for environment, for healthcare, a lot of shown that it inhaled. Okay, so I'll not that. This again, as I told you, is hydrogen. This is shown, or you lose the shown. The dye on a paper, it's a bluish color, and whenever you add the hydrogen, you can see the change in the color. So initially it's very, very high. When you add this hydrogen, you see the change in the spectra. Okay, and very, very importantly, we can see that this even the naked eye is colorless and then becomes yellowish color. Okay, the image is too small here. I'm a little bit sorry to you all. Okay, but naked eye. And most importantly, we can detect it in very, very less quantity. Okay, what I've shown here is a probe. Paper. Whenever, okay, and completely comes down. Okay, you can see a change in the fluorescence. And as I told you, we can detect it from the solution also. And these are the paper strips. You can see that at very high concentration, or even at very, very low, you can make it, and you can detect it in 0.003. So you can make a paper-based device with this, and that your detection is also very, very easily, very, very handy. In the vial which contains this, you on the top after you can get this color, and you can determine also the quantity. You can make this portable sensors for this. So very, very simple system. You can also have this hydrogen in the cancer cells. Okay, so cancer cell also generates hydrogen. We have chosen two types of cells: these HeLa cells and this HC. Biggest advantage in this, whenever you have this cell or the media, when you add this polymer, you don't need to wash it. Only the cells are stained. You can see the blue color. That means this, the small molecule that is there, or the dye molecule, it is only staining the cells. Okay, so this is very, very important here in both the cases. When very good sensor for hydrogen, even inside the cells. Okay, so these are very, very nice, very interesting study, and we can very easily. Same thing with other cell also, very, very detectable. And most importantly, that whenever you use this, one of the biggest problems that you all would be aware that or it gets. So this wash very less the cell. I move keeping this, we have made a lot of different kind of dye molecules, and in addition to the application in random access memory, I'm just skipping this this thing. You can see the beautiful colors with this. Okay, so we make a small change, we can get beautiful colors. Yellow, blue, green, even orange, red are there. I'm not shown here. These are CI coordinates. You can see the entire color spectrum. We can generate from these systems. Okay, I'm also skipping this. We have also devices applicable. I will just go to the next system, which is even simpler system. Okay, this is a very, very important molecule. Okay, as I told you, have this kind of system where they come and with each stacking. Okay, I've shown here. This is how this chain. In this case, okay. So whenever you have these 18 carbons, so this is how I've shown that the 18 carbons, they themselves don't allow these molecules to come close to each other. Okay, so the backbone that is there, they stay away from each other. Okay, this is a model we had shown, but now we know that it's also possible in other systems. Okay, so I'm just going through here. In this case, we are detecting another very important environmental pollutant. Is they are called organic volatile contaminants or organic volatile compound. There are a lot of them, and they cause lot of different diseases. These are these neurotoxic diseases. It can be hepatotoxic. They can also trigger asthma and cancer. Okay, so detection of this is very, very necessary. There are a lot of systems which have been tried. Okay, but in terms of chemistry, call them electron rich. Okay, there was no system which is so simple as we developed, and which is an electron deficient system. Okay, so again, in the same way that I showed earlier. Okay, here we have it's very, very bright. Okay, it's very, very bright, and then when you add this any of the organic volatile contaminants, you see the decrease in the fluorescence. Shown here. So these are very, very bright. Whenever you add this, in this case, we are detecting the xylenes. Okay, it's called the paraxylene or the metaxylene, or combined they're called the mesitylene. Whenever we add this, there is a quenching in the fluorescence. Again, the same thing, the reduction in the fluorescence, the same principle. What I showed earlier. Okay, so it is very, very useful for the detection of these organic volatile contaminants. Okay, so both the cases here I have not shown the same slides again. We can again make a film of this on the paper, and same thing we can leave it in the environment or wherever there's a contamination, we can leave it, and we can see that it's possible to detect these organic volatile contaminants very, very easily. I move on to a new area. Which is very interesting. It's called the detection of fingerprints, or it's mainly related to the security or the forensic science. How we can use this polymer. Now, I would like you all to pay attention to this system. I had shown you that these are the molecules which are very, very flexible. Okay. Now this is a very interesting system. I have 3 different components. This one, this is the second part, and the third part. Okay, so this is what gives the color yellow. If I increase the color of the quantity of this, I can go from blue to orange or red. Okay, whatever color I want. So that means number one, I can tune the color. Second thing is in this case, I also have another system which can bind with biological molecules. It's an ionic group. Okay, now why this is needed in this case? That I'm going to do the detection of the fingerprint. Okay, whatever components are there in the fingerprint, what all are there? I mentioned here in the red color. You have the sweat that is there always in the hand, and you have also already have the charged biomolecules in that. In addition to that, you also have some oily mixtures like the wax, the triglycerides, the cholesterol. Now to bind this, okay, you have the system. This is alkyl chain. These are all the oily parts. So this is what will help us interact with that. So the entire polymer system or the entire system has been developed in a way that it can detect or it can bind with the components of the hand or whatever is there on the finger. Okay. So this is very, very important part, and I'll be showing you why this is important. Okay, one aspect I would like to mention that the currently used technique that is there, they either use the super glue, fuming, or they use the cyanoacrylate vapor. There is a problem with this, that most of the time whenever you use this, you end up destroying the sample many times, and these are also very very toxic compounds. Okay, so whenever you do this, you always end up either destroying it, or you lose the sample, which is very very critical for any crime scene investigation. So in this case, we use this sample, and it can bind with any of this, and we have shown here that irrespective of the surface, irrespective of the type of sample, we can bind. Here I have shown that it can bind whether the fingerprint is on aluminum foil, on a glass slide, on an adhesive tape, or even a metal coin. Okay, so this is the first part. The second part, I have also shown that this can also bind. Suppose you have a crime scene, okay, and if there is a scene where there's a lot of blood also, you can see that blood is there. But whenever we add this polymer to that, the blood doesn't interfere with that. We can still see that, and we can also see that if somebody tries to damage the fingerprint, even if the lines and all, we can still try to get some kind of information from this. And most importantly, if you all pay careful attention to this, we can also get very very fine, very very intricate details that are there in the fingerprint. For example, some people may have these islands, or some people may have the bifurcation, or you may have this ridge ending of this within the middle, or you may have this core, and so you also have the sweat pores. Okay, the dots that you see, even these are the sweat pores that are there. So you can get very very fine details. Whereas, as I told you, in the detection of cancer cell, only the part which is raised in the fingerprint, only that is getting colored. Whereas the middle part of between this fingerprint, it doesn't get colored. Okay, it is very very important that we can get all the details of this fingerprint, that is present, and this from taken from different areas of the thumb. Everything can be detected with the help of this. This is one another application. I showed application of these polymers in this Alzheimer's disease, in cancer. I showed in the environmental applications. These are some applications that I have shown also in the forensic science. There are many other applications with the same polymer. I don't have time to discuss that, so I'm skipping that. Okay, this is another important area you all to know. Your madam specifically told to tell about the microorganism detection, but here I'm showing mainly device part. I will not go into the details. Okay, so these are the students. She is from physics background. Ashish, she's Anamika, and Ashish is from electronics background. There was a girl, one more girl, our collaborator, Dipanjali. She's from biotechnology background. So it was really a completely collaborative work. So what we did is, as I told you, that the transistor that we make, the organic field effect transistor, these are components which are present in almost all kind of devices. Okay, so in this case we have made a transistor, and a transistor which can detect various kind of bacteria. Okay, I don't know if you are able to see this. The middle part that I've shown here, we have made this on a simple transparency sheet, and it is really flexible. Okay, so we can bend it, we can roll it, whatever you want, we can do it. Okay, and what happens is that whenever you add a solution of water, this is also an environmental sensor. If the water is contaminated with bacteria, we can detect it instantly in the presence of this device. Okay, and we can also distinguish between gram-positive bacteria and gram-negative bacteria. Okay, this is because the cell wall has different components between the gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria. It's very easy to detect it. As soon as we did this, the publication came out. It got very wide publicity in the media also. One company that came up, we are now doing a lot of activities with them. They took up this technology, and they have now started making devices with this. So you can see now, a small device that we made in the lab, it has come out in the form of a prototype now. The same device, the flexible I showed here, we can have the device, prototype device here, and we can use it as a portable device. You can have a battery here, and we can do the detection. We can do the field work, wherever it is possible. Okay. Now we do a small change. This is about the prototype device. I'm going back to this slide. Okay. In this case, what we do is we change the active material, the PDIC8 that I've written, that is the active material, or we change this. Okay. There are other dielectric layers here. Whenever we change this, okay, we have also shown that instead of bacteria, we are also able to use it for detection of various kind of viruses. Okay, I have not shown given the details about this because it is under patent. I cannot disclose that as of now. Okay, but I'll be happy to discuss that later. And that is where the company's role has again come in. We were already working in this system, and that is where this COVID thing came up, and we were stuck in a different application. Okay, before I go to the COVID detection kit that we did, I'll also show you another sensor. Okay, the previous slide I showed you about this transistor. This is even a simpler device. The entire device, it costs less than 100 rupees. And here we are detecting some other environmentally very very toxic compounds, or it has this purpose. They're called nerve agents, or nerve gas agents. And we don't get to buy the nerve gas agent, but we can buy the nerve gas agent mimics. Okay, so same polymers, again, I'm coming back to same thing. We have the polymers. We can make a simple device with that. And I'm again going to show you a small movie. So this is, completely fabricated in the lab. The entire component, I'm again repeating it, the device and everything, it costs less than 100 rupees here. Okay, so what is there? We have this polymer, we have a film. It's a very good sensor for any of this. And we are inserting the vapor. Okay, so this is the device where we insert. This is the part where we get the circuit and the signal. And you will hear two signals. Okay, you can I also hear the sound, beep sound, and you can also see the light here in this part. I'm trying to bring my cursor here. I hope you all are able to see this. I'm just starting this video. Madam, are you able to see this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah. So here we're inserting the vapors of this inside. There's a small chamber. My student is taking out these vapors of the nerve gas agents, and we're injecting it. You can see the light here, and you can also hear the sound, I suppose. Okay. So it can be both. These are all very toxic compounds. You can also make a device with this. These are instantly reacting with our fluids of the body, and they're completely, highly poisonous. And to prevent this, we need to have this kind of systems where the detection is rapid, instant, and you can get out this signal in the form of either light and sound both. With the last part of my talk, I think I'm running out of time. I'll move a little quickly. It's about the detection of the virus. You all know about coronavirus. You all have seen this structure, very, very often everywhere in the net. Okay, I'll not go too much into detail, but if you want to detect this virus, this is a structure that has been shown in the net. You have various targets. You have the RNA that is enclosed within the protein. This is what, if you take out this RNA, that is what we have been doing with our kits. So, that is where you can detect it. Then you have the spike protein which can be detected, and you also have the lipid membranes. Okay, so these are unique to this coronavirus. Anybody targeting to develop a sensor system can utilize any of these biomarkers or any of these components of this virus. Okay, so this is the societal work also, as I mentioned, in the middle of March and early April, we were in discussion with the Assam state government for something, and they wrote to us that our country is going to face this severe pandemic. The entire world is facing, and is it possible for IIT Guwahati to help us at least start making this first component, this viral transport media, or why are these COVID kits needed? I'll be showing you this. Okay, and that is where we ended up making all the 3 kits within IIT Guwahati and got the ICMR approval. Okay, so these kits were it was quite challenging, and we had to make these kits by a very standard protocol. It's called the CDC, or that's what we followed, the Centers for Disease Control and the Prevention. So that they already have a protocol that is there, which has a mixture of a few buffers, a few antibiotics, few antifungal agents, and we have to follow that protocol, and we had to make this dye, and we had to make this kit. Okay, the viral transport media. And whenever we made this kit, this is the packet of the kit, entire kit. Okay, so it comes in a centrifuge tube, or 10 ml centrifuge tube, and we also have 2 kinds of swabs that we have, the oral and then the nasal swabs. And this is how it comes up in a packet. Okay, so in the one packet is that we have all the 3 components, and this has the liquid of close to 10 ml. In this we have this the next kit, RNA isolation kit, in which we once this we take out the swab, we put it in this centrifuge tube, and then the centrifuge tube is taken to the lab, and we take out this, we capture this RNA taken out, and then we purify it. And the next step is to, I don't know why this slide is jumping up, but yeah, so this is the process. We take out this, we do the amplification by this RT-PCR method, and the amplification, it gives up a very, very beautiful signal in the RT-PCR machine, and that is how we detect. So that's where all the 3 kits come up. So this was what came up in the media in a very, very big way. This is how we are selling the individual kits also to a lot of industries. All the 3 kits. Okay, the VTM kit. Okay, this is how it looks. The real picture of the kit. We can add this phenol red, which gives it the color. Then we have the RNA extraction kit, and then we have the RT-PCR kit. Okay, so this has been approved both by the ICMR. This has also been approved by the GMCH, and we are now giving it to a very, very very, very affordable price to all the hospitals across the country. And of course, we have separated more, supplied more than 3 lakh kits to Assam government itself. So we are very thankful to the Assam government, who have shown trust in us for developing these kits and helping us all through for, commercializing this as well. So we have got all the approvals, all the necessary thing, and we are now trying to even set up testing lab for Assam government and extending it to other places across the country. Okay, and one very important thing is when government of India realized, they have taken it up in a very, very big way as Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, and it has also been shown by the Prime Minister in his program. This is Mann Ki Baat. So it is a very, very big boost, moral boosting effort by us. It has been shown by our Prime Minister in Mann Ki Baat. Also the Education Minister, previously it was the HRD Ministry, Dr. R.P. Nishank. He has also tweeted this, the development with IIT Guwahati and RR Animal Healthcare. And similarly, the Ministry of Education has also shown this. It has also been highlighted by, a lot of other media across the country, including, a lot of media in Gujarat and other parts of the country. And we are now in talks with, a lot of firms in Gujarat to supply it in a lot of hospitals. Okay, so I hope that, I am able to show you all that how the chemistry or molecules or the different kind of polymers and small molecules with nanomaterials have applications in areas related to various diseases like neurodegenerative disorders in the brain. We also have applications in cancer, or you can also use it for detection of various environmental pollutants, okay, which are very hazardous, and microorganisms, the bacteria and virus. So you can see the entire progression. We started from we do a lot of work. These are applications in very interdisciplinary area. So don't stick to only it's a cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary world. You have to look for translational work. Okay, you have expertise in something. Talk to your friends. Talk to your teachers. Talk to scientists. How you can grow. How you can find applications in various different areas. Okay, before I end, I would like to all visit IIT Guwahati someday. These are beautiful campus. We have a lot of lakes. We have winter is coming. We have a lot of migratory birds that come up. These are guest house. So in addition to that, I also would like to mention that 5 major buildings in our campus are also given for the COVID care center. Okay, and guest house was also taken over. This is my chemistry department. This is the central library and the computer center. We have the administrative building. The beautiful campus, and just behind this mountain we have the mighty Brahmaputra river. Okay, so it's a beautiful campus, one of the most beautiful campus I would like to say in the country, for a nice environment for performing high-end research and education. So you all are welcome to come to our campus anytime. Hope this pandemic gets over. Till that time, stay safe, and thank you all very much. But that's all, Dr. Anupama, from me. If there are any questions, anything, I'll be happy to answer and discuss with you all.
Yes, sir. Surely, if our students will have any questions, I will get back to you. I will let you know if our students will have any queries or doubts. I will inform you, and then we can address. Then you can address the doubts. Okay, and. Apart from our microbiology and biotechnology students, we also have BSc, MSc Forensic Science and chemistry also. So your talk was so informative that even and so interdisciplinary that even our forensic students and chemistry students might have gained knowledge from this, and this COVID-19 detection test kit, that is really a very wonderful research work, sir. We are very fortunate enough that we have you here for the webinar, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, and I truly appreciate you that you have taken time from your busy schedule for this webinar, and thank you very much, sir, for enlightening our students with such an informative webinar. They would have been motivated by your interdisciplinary research approach, and we really enjoyed every minute of your webinar. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, and I look forward to collaborate you along with some of our students. They also might approach you for internship or other workshops or something.
Sure. Most welcome. We can discuss that, and let us see what we can do together.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye,
so shall I log out, madam?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.